Hello and welcome to Mental Health on the Mighty. My name is Camera and this is the incredible Gabe. This is Ask a Bipolar Advocate and the Bipolar Advocate, Gabe Howard. Wonderfully here. I am a Mighty digital media producer. I will be moderating this wonderful live. If you have any questions for Gabe about mental health, anxiety, depression, bipolar, just something on your mind, ask in the comments below and he will answer and I will guide. Gabe, would you like to tell a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, first off, camera, thank you so much. So often camera over there is hiding behind, well, the camera. And I'm like, thank you, camera. And everybody's like, who is he talking to? This is who I am talking to. So big round of applause
Thank you, Gabe.
for camera for handling all of the back end stuff. So my name is Gabe Howard and I live with bipolar and anxiety disorder. I wrote the book Mental Illness is an Asshole and Other Observations, 380 pages of awesome that you can get on gabehoward.com or wherever fine books are sold. I am also the host of the Inside Mental Health podcast. It's a very cool podcast. It's available wherever you can find a podcast, or you can go over to psychcentral.com/show. It'll give you links, or you can listen right there. Covers tons of subjects, just so many subjects, so many different types of people, from celebrities to doctors to people with lived experience, and of course, everybody in between. And of course, if there's a topic that we haven't covered, just shoot me an email and I'll probably cover it, because you can't be called Inside Mental Health if you're not covering all of mental health. Just real quick to kind of give you a little bit of background from me, other than what I wrote and what I host, and that I live with bipolar disorder. Was diagnosed back in 2003 after being committed to a psychiatric hospital. And I knew this much. I knew zero. I knew absolutely nothing about mental illness, living with mental illness, managing mental illness. And in fact, what I did know, I learned on television. So it was completely wrong. It was devastating to be diagnosed. The stigma, self-stigma was devastating. The stigma from other people was devastating. What my family went through before I was diagnosed, when I was in the hospital and afterward, it was so preventable that it was just so incredibly sad that we didn't prevent it. And it took so long, and I had to jump through so many hoops in order to reach recovery. Now, I define recovery as spending more of my time living my life than I do managing bipolar disorder. I thought to myself when I got well, I was like, man, I really wish somebody would do something about this so that other people don't have to go through what I went through. So I started volunteering. I started working with other people, and I just sort of rose up to here to be a guest on the Mighty. So please do not be shy. There's no question off limits. If I am unable to answer it, obviously I would just say I don't know or pass, but there'll be no hard feelings, I promise. Just put them in the comments, and for the next half an hour, we'll do what we can. All right, camera, do we have questions? Camera is gone.
I'm right here. We've got 2 questions ready to go. And Trisha is our first question of the day. So
Hi,
Trisha, hi Gabe, from Trisha. Have you heard of the chill pill for anxiety? Just wondering what people think about it. My therapist just told me about it. I'm curious if that's like just the chill pill, like chill pill, or if that's the chill pill. There's a chill pill for anxiety, literally. Like
I've heard of medication for anxiety. I'm not going to name any of them, but there's a few. I'm going to call them like what's a word I'm looking for? Like on-demand treatments, meaning not an anxiety pill that you would take like every day to manage anxiety, but something that you would take when you were experiencing a panic or anxiety attack. I've absolutely heard of those. There's a few different ones. They target a variety of different things in the brain. They work differently for people. And what people think about it is, if it works for you, people love it. If it doesn't work for you, people hate them. And there's a trial and error to it. I remember I have a pill that I take, sort of an on-demand treatment for panic attacks. And while the pill absolutely unequivocally manages the symptoms of a panic attack, One of its downsides is it makes me very drowsy, and it leaves me in a state where I don't feel comfortable to drive. And if I was in surrounded by a bunch of people, I would feel somewhat vulnerable just because of the way that it makes me feel. So if I have a really, really, really bad panic attack at home, it's the bomb. But if I have a really, really bad panic attack at, say, a party with a whole bunch of people that I don't know, and I drove myself, it's not so great for me, because I couldn't take it right there, because one, I would be stuck at the party with a bunch of people I don't know, and two, I would be unable to drive. The middle ground on that is if I'm at a party with a friend or a family member or my wife, and I have the really, really bad panic attack, I can tell them that I have to go, that we have to go. They run interference, and I can take the chill pill. I like that name, on the way out. Your mileage may vary. There is a little bit of trial and error to it. And I've heard from many, many people that, some people are able to take a very low dose, and they're like, no, it calms me right down, and I can just keep moving forward. I don't have any problem at all. So again, work with your prescriber, work with your doctor, and find out what works for you. Because once you zero in on it, it's just rinse and repeat for, a good long time. Thank
Yeah.
you, Trisha.
Apparently,
It's always hard to go
Trisha.
first.
Yeah. Apparently, it's a device you hold in your hand. I'm very intrigued what this chill pill device. I would, when I think of a chill pill, I think of like one of those squishy, like the
Yeah,
things
like
that you
my
do for like
minion.
stress. Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't think that's what Trisha's talking about, but I think that's my kind of chill pill.
Well, I guess the answer to Trisha's question is no. I have not heard of it, and I have no information on it. But there's going to be some mad Googling when this is over. So, Trisha, thank you for introducing me to something that I didn't know, and I apologize that I misunderstood your question.
Oh, no, I think that's a really important question though to tackle within like kind of how medication can affect and what the pros and cons are for that.
Very,
So
very true.
Michelle has a question. I want to bring this up. I've been burning. I'm gonna guess like burning out. Like I'm working with a new therapist, but they don't know enough enough about me. I'm gonna think enough about me. They could be wrong, and how do I know? Oh, they don't know if they're enough for me. Oh, they don't. I'm working with a new therapist, but they don't know if they're enough for me. They could be wrong. How do I know? Okay. Oh,
So
interesting.
these are always the tough ones, right? Because there's no definitive test. Like, wouldn't it
Yeah.
be great, camera, if you're like, hey, I'm concerned about X, and like, hey, it's no problem. We'll take some hair, take some urine, take some blood, whatever, put it in the little cylindrical thing that spins the test tube, and boom, if it turns blue, you have X. We don't have that. So first and foremost, it's understandable that you would wonder if they're wrong. And I don't think that's unreasonable, right? I think that it's very important that we understand our care and that we're on board with it. So the first thing that I want to say is be open to the idea that not only are they wrong, but it's equally important to be open to the idea that you are wrong, right? We don't want to bias ourselves that we know everything and they know nothing. We don't want to do the reverse either, right? We don't want to know everything and they know nothing. It's super important that we have a solid give and take, and we're open to this partnership. As far as whether or not they're enough, or if you need different treatment, ask for a second opinion. Make an appointment with somebody else. Explain and be like open. People think that they can't be open, that they're seeking a second opinion. Completely disagree with that. Make an appointment with another therapist and say, hey, listen, I am concerned about X. Ask them to get the records. Ask them to have a conference. Just it's certainly okay to give as much information as humanly possible. In fact, it's encouraged. Like I said, there's not that definitive test. So if you're holding back information, it's reasonable for people to come up with a different answer, the wrong answer, and that could really impact your care. The reality is obviously I don't know, but what you need to focus on is the fact that you don't know, and you want clarity on the subject, and you need to advocate for yourself and just very bluntly and boldly say, look, I don't know if you're right, and I need to be on board. How can we work together to move this forward? And if they're unwilling to work with you, they're not the best fit, and you should talk to an office manager or your insurance company or your payer source or whomever you can to try to switch to a different person who understands that the client-patient relationship is about that relationship. It's not a client-patient dictatorship on either side. It's a mutual understanding to move forward so that you can absolutely get the best care. But again, I do want to stress, sometimes patients hear, I can tell the doctor what to do. Nobody's saying that. Partner with the doctor, be open-minded, work with your doctor, and come to reasonable conclusions and be willing to try things. Doctors and therapists and providers, they really are pretty good at their jobs the majority of the time. So it's certainly okay to say, I am willing to try this, but if I don't see results in 4 weeks, then we get to try my thing. A little negotiation goes a long way. Thank you so much. All right,
Yeah.
Camera.
All right, next question. All right, Raja, I am recovering from bipolar and the doctor has just stopped my medication. I am struggling with my anxiety and tremors and also overthinking about the future. What's kind of your advice in that situation, Gabe?
One of the things that's very curious to me is why a doctor would stop bipolar medication. That's
Yeah.
extraordinarily unusual and sincerely a red flag. One of the biggest problems that we have in the bipolar community is that when people with bipolar disorder are really sick, whether from depression or mania or in crisis, we get diagnosed, we get medication, and we become stable. And then once we become stable, we stop taking our medication. And then, of course, once we stop getting the treatment for the disorder is able to creep back in. It's a real problem for people like myself to do. And doctors, therapists, providers, support groups are always working with us like, hey, when you start to feel better, that's a good thing. Now's not the time to quit. Now the time to stay the course. So I'm really surprised that a doctor would just stop your medication. So I would really inquire as to why that was and understand why you were pulled off of that. Are you going to be put on another medication? Is it just to titrate it out of your system so that you can bring up on a different medication, maybe because of side effects? So it certainly sounds like going off of the medication did not get the results that you were looking for because you're struggling with anxiety, you have tremors, you're overthinking, paranoia, things of that nature. So it's very important to report all of those things to your doctor. Call them up, make an appointment immediately, and just say, hey, look, the changes that you have made to my medical treatment have not made me better. In fact, they've made me worse. Here are the symptoms that I am experiencing, and we need to work together to get that relief. So sincerely, call them up and tell them exactly what you just told us. I am struggling with my anxiety and tremors and also from overthinking about the future. And it's in direct response to my medication being lowered. So that's what I would sincerely recommend.
Yeah, always good to check in with your doctor, especially when you're changing medications or getting off medications. It's really good to kind of keep that connection and
What
see.
she said.
Yeah. Well, get what Gabe said was really good. All right.
No, it's what
We're
she
gonna we've
She's
got a
correct.
question that I'm really intrigued about just because there's a lot more research in the world going on and I think that it's a good discussion to keep having. Heather is asking, what do you know about bipolar and psychedelics? I'm thinking that maybe kind of going into the different research that's going into with microdosing, still also a lot of research that needs to be done, but an interesting field. I honestly don't know that in bipolar, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that, Gabe.
So it's emerging, for lack of a better word, it's emerging technology, right? Here's sort of what it reminds me of. Back in the 80s, our cell phones came in suitcases. I just watching it, like, for real, it's like this big suitcase and the battery the battery was a car
The brick.
battery. But yeah, I mean, it was just gigantic. And now look at it. We have a whole computer that's like this size, like that became that. Now, obviously, when everybody was looking at portable cellular phone technology, we couldn't have known where it was going to end up. But somebody had the foresight to think, I think this can end up someplace good. I think we're on a track. Now, there was lots of complaints when it first came out. There were lots of problems. Who's going to lug a suitcase around? You can only mount them in cars. Uber expensive. Dropped call. I mean, just brutal. It was just brutal when cell phones first came out, or available to the public market. but it evolved from there. Psychedelics right now are like in that 1980s cell phone space. There's potential, but potential doesn't mean anything. There's a lot of things that have to happen before you realize that potential, but we can sort of see it build. And we're now starting to get research on the subject and understanding. And some of that stigma is moving away now. Now some of it is ramping up. I mean, this is America after all. We can't agree on getting vaccinated for a plague. We're going to just take our chances. And remember that phrase, avoid it like the plague? It turns out that half of us won't do that. So it's super important to understand that I don't know where we're going to end up, and neither does anybody. But it's super interesting to consider that for arguably the first time in history, we're really looking into this. And what we know about psychedelics is that they are mind altering. I mean, it's literally referred to as a mind altering drug. Now, this can be very bad, but if your mind is deficient in some way and you can do the study and figure out how to alter your mind back to where you're trying to get it to be, if it's an outlier and you alter it right back to the middle, it's exciting emerging research. Please, 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 just like with the giant suitcase cellular phone, it didn't go from suitcase cellular phone to the computer we have in our pocket overnight. It took a lot of research. It took a lot of people being very open-minded. It took a lot of failures. I mean, remember the BlackBerry? I mean, that thing was just a brick waiting to happen. But it got us there. It got us there slowly because we just kept moving forward. That's where psychedelics are right now. It's super exciting. I'm very intrigued and I'm very hopeful, but a lot more study and a lot more research needs to come out. As far as how it's going to treat bipolar disorder, that's still a question that is up in the air right now, but it is being looked into and it is being studied. And I hear really, really good things. But keep in mind, it is new and emerging research, and we want to proceed with extreme caution to make sure that we end up in the correct place. Thank you so much for that question. There's a Netflix documentary. I had nothing to do with it. It's called Fantastic Fungi, which is yeah, and it's psychedelic based. I mean, it's got a lot of tie-ins to psychedelics, based on mushrooms or magic mushrooms for a street term. It touches on mental illness for a little bit, but it's on Netflix. It's widely available, and I interviewed the creator of that documentary on Inside Mental Health, and he is very excited about the potential, and I think that's super exciting. Super exciting. So watch that documentary if you want to learn more.
Yeah, and then listen to the interview. I'm excited for the research, and I'm excited to see what comes of it. So thank you, Heather. All right, our next question, Deborah. Deborah, Gabe, do you find certain foods are helpful for optimal mental health? Thank you for being here today. And yes, thank you for sharing a question, Deborah. We appreciate you being here today.
So Deborah, yes and no. Is there like one food that if you eat this diet, you'll have better mental health? No. There are vegetarians that have mental health issues. There's vegans that have mental health issues, and there's meat eaters that have mental health issues, and everybody in between. So there's not one magic diet that automatically cures you from the effects of mental illness or improves your mental health. That said, and this is very, very important, eating junk food 100% of the time is going to make you feel bad. If your entire diet is takeout pizza and sheet cake and chocolate bars and Doritos, you're going to feel bad. It's not food that provides energy. It's not food that promotes wellness. It's not, frankly, it's not anything. There's a lot of empty calories. There's not a lot of protein. There's a lot of fat. There's a lot of grease. And people that eat a diet like that don't feel mentally healthy the majority of the time. And of course, it builds on itself. You're so depressed you can't cook, so you order the pizza. The pizza is nothing but a grease fest. And that, of course, makes you feel worse, and it builds on itself. So if I had to say that there was a diet that was optimal for mental health, it is to make sure that you're getting the majority of your foods to be healthy. eat some vegetables. I hear my mom in my head telling me to eat my veggies, and finally, 44 years later, I realized that she was right. It's okay to have a snack, but be smart about your snack. Nobody's saying you can't have Doritos, but put the Doritos in a bowl. Put a handful in a bowl, wrap up that bag, put a paper clip on it, a clothespin, and put it back in the cabinet. Don't just leave it sit out, and that's all you get. So many people are like, well, I've got to buy the big bag because it's the better deal at the gas station or the convenience store. You know what? It may be the better deal, but it's not the better deal for your health. Buy the little bag. Buy the dollar bag, even though you get 3 times as much for the $1.79 bag. It's okay. You're playing the long game. Uh, Drinking water is healthy. Again, nobody's saying you can't have your coffee in the morning, but try to limit your caffeine intake and your coffee intake. All of these things will impact your mental health. And then finally, listen to your body. This is something that I really think that Americans don't understand. We believe in a one size fits all approach, and that is not right. For example, I am 6'3", 250 pounds. I'm a 44-year-old man. I am going to need more calories than my 5'3", not going to say her weight because I'm not stupid, wife who is 10 years younger. She weighs a lot less than I do. She's a foot shorter than I am. She has different needs than I do. So if we both adopted the 2,000 calorie recommended diet, one of us is not getting what we need. I've also learned that caffeine impacts people differently. It's not a one size fits all. Some people need more calcium, lean meats, etc. Listen to your body. If you eat something and it makes you feel bad, that food is bad for your mental health. If you eat something and it makes you feel good and energized and full, that food is excellent for your mental health, and it will vary from person to person. So sincerely, put down the magazine, listen to your body. Our bodies will tell us when food is bad. And believe me, I do eat the foods that are bad. I do it all the time. I'm going to have pizza tonight. I know that I'm
Macaroni
going
and
to
cheese
do
is
it.
great.
Oh, macaroni and cheese is beautiful. But let's, Camera,
Moderation.
comfort foods have their place. I just think it's
Yeah.
super important to be, again, I'm super guilty of this and I feel hypocritical saying this, but there is wisdom in this idea of instead of eating the whole box of macaroni and cheese or the whole mom's recipe like I am prone to do, uh, eat a little bit and then put the rest in a Tupperware right away, and do it right away. Like put it all in the
It's
Tupperware,
so
put it in
easy
the
to
refrigerator,
recall.
and then sit down with your portion.
Yep.
I am much less likely to go back for seconds if I know that it's already divvied up in the Tupperware, in the refrigerator, and the kitchen is cleaned up. It doesn't work 100% of the time,
But
but there's small little tricks.
yeah. And I think there's something to say about like when you say like trust yourself of what foods are right and for you. Like there's a lot of research right now into gut health, and everyone's obviously gut health is different, but your gut, not just your gut, but your actual gut can tell you like there are foods for every person differently a little bit that are really good for you and for your mental health. So yeah, that's something to talk to your doctor about and also to look into, because just because blueberries are good for most people, there are some people who might have allergic reactions to blueberries or don't feel good when they eat blueberries. But then the research is showing that blueberries are good for mental health. So just kind of, it's like Gabe said, take it as with a grain of salt, but look into the stuff that's supposed to be good and ask your doctor.
Yeah. Deborah, thank you so much for this question. We usually don't get questions like this. And sincerely, along the, just a real quick plug, taking a walk absolutely helps mental health for
Yeah.
so many reasons. It's not just the get up and get moving and just, yes, all of that. Absolutely. Everything that exercise physiologists say that exercise makes you feel better is 100% true. But I got to tell you, there's a couple of things that people don't consider the accomplishment. It's like yesterday I spent all day inside, and today I walked around the block. That's like an amazing accomplishment, right? Like forget about the exercise factor. Just hey, I got up, I got dressed, and I walked around the block. Like that's amazing, right? You know how many times I've walked around the block and I ran into that neighbor or that dog or that squirrel or whatever, and I'm just like, oh, well, that was nice. And
It
then,
changes your frame of mind. It's
yeah,
good.
I once said during COVID that I need to go someplace else because even if I'm quarantined there, at least I will get to see different walls. And so often people are like, well, if I go for a walk, I'll still be depressed. Yes, probably. I'm not trying to blow smoke, but at least you will see different things while you're depressed.
Yep.
And I believe that gives us our best opportunity to maybe, that's all I can offer is a maybe, to maybe move forward.
Cool. Wonderful. I have two, we've got a bunch more questions that are coming in. Thank you, Deborah. But there's one that I want to take really quickly and then go to the next one. I see that Marty wrote in, and I think this is a pretty quick answer, but just want to support Marty and what they're going through. Hi, Gabe. I take this medication and it seemed to be getting worse. I feel like I'm dying. I'm scared. This sounds like, I mean, first off, I would say not the right medication and you should be talking to your doctor. Gabe, if you can like let them know what the best course of action is in that
Yes.
situation.
Please call your prescriber ASAP and say that exactly. Just exactly that just you want to know if you can stop taking it immediately or make an immediate appointment. You need immediate relief. I will say, just so you know, before you call, I seem to be worse. I feel like I'm dying. I'm scared. Those are conclusions. So if you can be very specific, I seem to be worse because I'm no longer sleeping, or because my hand shakes, or I feel like I'm dying because my heart is racing, I'm sweating, try to give the doctor the specific things that are happening while you're on the phone, because that helps very, very much. But you have a right to be scared. It's understandable. Please call your doctor immediately, explain what's going on, and tell them that you need instant relief, because obviously you don't want to continue to live this way. Marty, thank you so much for reaching out.
Thank you,
Please
Marty.
make that call.
Yeah. I appreciate you reaching out, Marty. That's the first step. Now reach out to your doctor. All right. Rachel, this is a great question and a one that I need help with too. How do you push for an official diagnosis? It feels like it's the hardest thing. So Rachel thinks that they might have borderline personality disorder or bipolar because of extreme moods, and I never know what I will be like. I know you shouldn't Google the symptoms, but that sounds exactly like me. I mean, we all Google the cut, the cough, the weird mole, the mental. We all do it, and I think it's fine to like start the self-diagnosis process so you have something to tell your doctor. Just know that doesn't mean you're that. But Gabe, if you want to take it away with the bipolar diagnosis.
Yeah, so first thing, getting a diagnosis is difficult, right? Because there's only certain people who can diagnose. Psychologists, psychiatrists, sometimes general practitioners are willing to diagnose. There are some therapists who are willing to diagnose, but to get the right diagnosis, I suggest going with a psychologist, or a psychologist, a nurse, a psychiatric nurse practitioner, a psychiatrist. Try to get somebody specifically in the mental health field. Obviously, general practitioners can diagnose, but it's always nice to see a specialist, right? As far as pushing for a diagnosis, I would push in this manner. I would say, what's my diagnosis? And if the doctor says, I don't know, why? Why don't you know? What are you waiting to observe? Do you have a time frame? Is there anything that I can do to help you reach a diagnosis, like keep a journal, have more appointments, keep track of something? The reason that doctors and therapists are reluctant to diagnose is if you're on a line, if you're on the border, if they're not sure, because so many times that first diagnosis that you get, people hang on to. That's number one. So if they diagnose you with A, and then 2 months later, there's like, you know what, I think it might be B, people are like, nope, I'm A. I'm A. I don't want to hear it. The first one is the right one. And that's just not how psychiatry and psychology works. Number two, there's some people, it's like you diagnose them with A, and then a few months later, you get more data and you're like, I think a more fitting diagnosis is B. They're like, this is quackery. They don't even know what's going on. They've diagnosed me with 2 things in the last 2 months. So doctors have really learned to just to hang on and make sure they've really got all their ducks in a row and they've got a lot of data, because they don't want to scare the general public, because the general public often has a very misunderstanding of how psychiatry, psychology, and, well, frankly, science works. A diagnosis changing does not mean that anybody did anything wrong. It simply means that more data became available. I always use the example of nobody is currently spraying water on my house. The fire department drives by all the time and they're never spraying water on my house. Now my house caught on fire and they started spraying water on my house. So of course that just proves that they're quacks. They weren't spraying water on my house yesterday. Now somebody would say, well, but Gabe, the data changed. Your house is now on fire. No, I don't want to hear it. They drove past my house and they did nothing. So clearly the fire department is just quackery, just quackery. That's an extreme analogy. Obviously fire can be seen, but imagine if the thing that they needed to do was something that you couldn't see. Yesterday, they told you that you didn't have foundation issues. Today, they're telling that you did. And you're like, well, what changed from the last 24 hours? And you can't see it because foundations are buried. This is how it is to diagnose psychiatric disorders. And I certainly understand what psychologists, doctors, the medical field is up against. So work with your doctor, ask them to help you understand what I don't want to say hold up, but what the challenges are in reaching a diagnosis. If you're able, you can ask them where they're leaning or what they're thinking or what they're observing, what it might be. You can explain to them that you understand that it might change, maybe have that conversation that you understand that this is not perfect, and then just work together and see what you can do. I have to say, though, it is by far better to get the right diagnosis slowly than the wrong diagnosis quickly. So as frustrating as it can be, I certainly understand why doctors behave this way. All right, we've got a few minutes left. So we've got, what's that called? The speed round. We got the speed round, Cameron.
They're never speed round questions. Like when we do a speed round, they're always like more in-depth questions. There isn't anyone just asking us the definition of bipolar today. We've got the goods. So Michelle wanted to ask, let's see, how do you know a given medication, how do you give a medication a chance before complaining to, which kind of I think extends on that conversation from before, before complaining to my psychiatrist the medication doesn't work, to move on to a new medication? Like, how long do you give medication a chance before you're like, no, this is not for me?
So there's no set perfect example. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of information. First off, if a medication causes like a serious side effect quickly, then it doesn't matter the amount of time. For example, if you're given a medication on Monday and on Wednesday, it just completely knocks you out, then you need to call up and say, hey, I'm on this new medication and now I'm sleeping 24 hours a day. Now, if the doctor says, that is very normal. Sometimes in the first couple of weeks, it has that effect, but then it levels out. Then wait the 2 weeks, just like the doctor said, and see if that levels out. Not to overshare, but I had a medication that caused gastrointestinal issues for the first couple of weeks, but now I've been stable on that medication for almost 6 years, and it's a wonderful medication, and I only had the side effects for those couple of weeks. I called and complained immediately because it was unsettling, and the doctor was like, "Oh, yep, that's a perfectly understandable side effects. Give me 2 weeks. If it doesn't clear up, we'll move on to something else." Gave him the 2 weeks. Boom. Generally speaking, medication takes 6 to 8 weeks to reach efficacy levels. So as far as, okay, I have depression, I've taken this pills. If you still have depression 8 weeks later, now is a good time to say, look, I'm not really seeing any relief. Now, I will say, be sure that you're not seeing any relief, because nothing's going to take you from your worst day to your best day in 8 weeks. Try to monitor that relief. Are you doing better? Are you doing marginally better? Maybe keep track in a mood journal. Just, today is how I'm feeling, and then just keep writing it so that you can look back at the last 8 weeks. Keep an open mind. This is very important because sometimes it's the right medication but the wrong dose. So you're like, I am feeling, you should complain, I'm not feeling where I want to, but I am feeling a little better. And then maybe the doctor can just tick up the dose, and then all of a sudden you just reach those efficacy levels. So in general, if something happens that you just cannot live with, a striking symptom, just wow, this is way different, you should report that immediately, and then work with your doctor to find out why. Is this normal? Is this typical? Can I get through it? Or is this something that I need to change immediately? Or 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes 3 months is really a good amount of time. The sad part of mental health issues and mental illness is that it does take so long to get those right medications. because they take so long to reach efficacy levels and for self-reporting to figure out, hey, am I doing better or is this just a natural uptick? So I would say a minimum of 8 weeks, again, unless something striking happens, and then you should report something striking immediately. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, Kate. I struggle with depression every day. I'm putting my happy face mask on, but inside I'm totally broken. I don't believe in therapy, but it seems like you're open to being convinced. How do I convince myself to look for help? So what's the argument? How do we convince Kate that therapy could work or could
Kate,
be?
I completely understand. I want you to know when people say, I don't like therapists, I don't want to talk about my problems, I think it's stupid. The first thing that clicks in my brain is, yeah, that makes sense. It really does. I think to myself, how is talking to somebody going to fix anything? And then I start to think about some things. I start to think about how I behave in my personal life. Like when I see a movie that I really like, and I immediately call my best friend who lives in California. So literally on the other coast, I'm like, did you see the new Marvel movie? We have to discuss it, because discussing it raises the value of that movie in my mind. Or some days when I'm just, I'm just feeling down. I feel like everything's a bummer. And I call my mom and I ask her for a recipe. I don't want the recipe. I'm not going to make it. I just want her to talk to me about how she made meatloaf and mashed potatoes when I was a kid, or have some conversation about, nostalgic, easier, I don't know, better days, for lack of a better word. Uh, Talking things out really helps, and having a trusted guide really helps. Therapy is not for everyone, and therapists aren't for everyone, but more often than not, people get value out of therapy, at least for a little while. I'm not saying that you have to go to therapy for the rest of your life. Maybe 6 sessions will get you where you need to be to take off on your own. And that's the thing that I don't think people understand. So many people are like, look, I don't want to be in therapy for the rest of my life. No, nobody said that. That's not something that may be right for you. In fact, it's majority of people aren't in therapy for the rest of your life. But going to get the help you need with that one problem and moving on, extraordinarily powerful. If you're not willing to see a therapist one-on-one, listen, what about group therapy? What about joining a support group that talks about things, even a peer support group, or a support group that is led by a therapist, but there's 5, 6, 8, 10 people in that group. Sometimes that's a great way to not only learn some hints and tricks from a trained professional, the therapist, but also to learn some tips and tricks from your fellow therapy group members. So you get a little bonus on both ends. The reality is that sometimes there's just things that we can't handle on our own. I would never try to fix my own car. I would never try to put the fire out in my house. I can't even fix a toilet. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just terrible. I'm just terrible at all of these things. So I know that I need help, and I know who to call for that help. And I don't feel bad about it because it's not my area of expertise. Sometimes when you're trapped in your own mind and you can't get out of it, and like you said, you're putting on the happy face mask, and you've tried everything that you can think of. It's reasonable to talk to somebody else, give them the information, and have them give you other things to try, because they're experts at it and that's what they do. Listen, they can't do it for you. All they can do is give you some suggestions. And I really, really believe that that's the power of therapy, is just an unbiased third party to talk these things out with, to give you hints and tips so that you can move forward on your own. And here's the best part. You can just take all the credit. Like, go to the therapist, don't tell anybody, and everybody's like, oh, okay, you're doing so much better. And you're like, yeah, I am. They don't need to know why. Kate, thank you so much. Sincerely, I see a therapist. Even my dad.
Yeah,
My
I see
dad is a
therapists.
70-year-old truck. Yeah, camera sees a therapist.
It's
Listen,
fun. I like it.
my father he's 70. He's a 70-year-old blue collar truck driver. The 18-wheeler, like the thing that smells like diesel all the time. He drives that truck. Little guy just drives that truck. He saw a therapist. And I asked him why once. And he said, because your mom said that if I didn't go, she was going to leave me. And as much as he hated therapists, he loved my mom and his family more. And he admits to this very day, this tough guy who never talks, he's like, no, therapy is good. And then he kind of like looks away. But he admits that he was wrong about it. And listen, it is, I believe my parents, it saved their marriage. And I believe my dad, He said it just took away so much anger that he had about his childhood. And listen, he told me this years later. I did not witness this growing up. He told me this when I was afraid to go see a therapist, because pretty much my dad's the toughest guy I know. So when I was like, I don't know about this therapy thing, and he said he did it, it's for me.
It's like
I know I did not know about toxic masculinity when this whole thing happened. I think back on this a lot, and I'm like, wow. Are we like we were like we should be in like a made-for-TV movie on how
yeah.
masculinity hurts people, because it was just a
It
mess.
really
Like,
does. I
yeah,
have I have a lot of guy friends who are just like, "I don't need a I don't wanna talk, like, therapy's not for me." And then I have some guy friends who I've told, like, about we've talked about therapy and they think it's cool and they're like, "Hey," they text me when they're like, "I got a therapist, like, I got a new therapist," and they're, like, all excited about it. I'm like, "Make therapy cool." Yes.
my dad's super secret about it. So every time I say it on a podcast or a show or an interview, and he's always like in the back, he's like, not as fun. But he's a
It's
good guy and he understands that it's helpful. He does, but he's still him.
no, all good. I think I've got 2 more questions that I want us to answer that I
All
feel
right.
like can be a little bit quicker, but I feel like they're really good questions for now, that we haven't really even tackled these, questions. So Amanda asked a really great question. How do you think what do you think is the best way to help a friend who's going through depression and is telling you about their suicidal ideation?
Listen, listen, and don't offer advice. I think that's the most difficult thing for people is they want to fix it. We all want to fix it. And we're guilty of this with our friends too. I think of like my wife. My wife comes home from work and she's like, I had a bad day and my coworker did this and my boss was annoying, and I go into fix it mode. And she looks at me and she's like, I can handle my own job, right? Like I I just want to bounce this off of somebody and maybe complain and get it off my chest. I don't need you to fix it, Gabe. Now, I recognize that the stakes are much higher when we're talking about suicidal ideation. And that's why the stakes are much higher. That's why listening is super important. Now, listen, if you feel that they are in immediate harm, or just if you feel that they're in harm, they're going to act on it, they have a plan, call 911, take them to the emergency room. Don't leave them alone. Get them to act on it immediately, even if you have to call 911. It's super important. If you feel that it's just ideation, which is a different thing, it's sort of a low level thing that they're just feeling badly, you still want to get them help. And the help that you want to get them is, one, make sure they have these numbers right here. Tell them that anybody can call. You don't have to be in immediate crisis. You don't have to have a plan. You don't have to be moments away. You can just feel lonely and bad, and you can call either one of these numbers. Two, encourage them to seek out help. Therapist, support group, go to the emergency room, whatever they need, and tell them that you'll go with them. You'll help them navigate the system. So many people want to see a therapist, but frankly, they're just too tired and depressed to fill out the insurance paperwork or to make an appointment or to figure out where one is. Therapists aren't in retail corridors, right? You got to find them. You got to drive there. If you're like me and you get lost, then you have to fill out insurance paperwork. And of course, you have to do all of this while depressed. Just offer to help. Finally, ask them what they need. Ask them what you can do for them. It's Tell them that you are there. Just reiterate over and over, I am here for you. Let me know what you need. And if it is reasonable, if the request is reasonable, provide it for them. Encourage them to seek help and tell them that you will support them in seeking that help. And make yourself available as best you can, because sometimes so many people just need to talk it out.
Yeah.
And it can be scary to hear, but it can also be cathartic for the person who's doing it, and it shows that they trust you very much. If you and your friend are huggers, hug a lot. If you're not huggers, fist bump. If you're not fist bumpers, do whatever you do to show genuine affection and gratitude and love. I'm a hugger, so I always say hug, but I know not everybody is a hugger. Do whatever it takes. Eat a lot of ice
Yeah.
cream, order pizza, hang out, watch a
Yeah, I
movie.
think it should. Yeah, a movie would be great. I think that it does show, like, that they're trusting you and such, and they like, I think it like, Gabe, like you said, the most important thing is to listen, to be there, and to, like, at the end of it, let them know that you are there for them, that you are thankful that they shared, like, when that kind of vulnerability, they're looking for some, like, if they're actually telling you about it, it's because they feel safe with you and they want a reason to talk about it and to feel okay. So letting them know that it's normal to have these feelings, like that you're concerned, but you, because you care and that you want them in your life and you want them to stick around and that you're willing to listen and hear them out and that that's okay to share with them. So, you know, really great.
Wonderful.
Well, there's so many great questions. If we have time, there are two more, if that's okay. We can
All right. All right. We'll go quick.
We'll go quick. All right. So there's this one. I just want to make sure that we get to it because I feel like it was a good one. We kind of touched on it, but maybe just get a little touched about medication and what else we can do. Stacy was talking about being diagnosed with bipolar and PTSD, having some paranoia maxed out on antipsychotic dose. So she's maxed out there. Don't want to go on another medication because of weight gain and concerns and fogginess that comes through medicine change. I know that you will probably benefit and defend medicine as well, but what are the other options and ways to deal with those thoughts?
Well, one of the things to think about, Stacy, is I completely understand your desire not to go on another medication, I'm not even. I don't think that's I think that's a great stance. I mean, you've got the weight gain concerns, you got fogginess. I mean, these are all. It sounds like the medication is, one, not doing what it needs to do, and two, coming with a host of side effects. What I would recommend is talking to your doctor about removing the medication that you're on and finding a different one, because it seems like the cocktail that you're on is just not doing what it's supposed to do. Now, I know that switching medications is a pain. Sincerely, I know that it's a pain. It took 4 years from the time that I was diagnosed to the time I got all of the right medications, and 4 years is a really, really long time. But here's the thing: all the rest of the years are mine. I get them all. So the sooner you find that right medication, the sooner all the rest of the years are yours. And it's just a long process. It's a painful, long, annoying process. And I personally don't like it. I can't imagine that anybody likes it. But I am sincere when I say that it is worth it. I would talk to your doctor about everything that you just told me, because it sounds like the cocktail that you're on, it's just not working, and you want to try different medications, titrate down, titrate up. It's going to be difficult. I understand. Express those fears to your doctor and ask what they can do. But ultimately, if therapy is not working for you with the medication that you're on, your medications are probably not dialed in right. And it's therapy can help if everything is dialed in okay, but you would be the one to know that. If you think to yourself, okay, I have enough control over my thoughts with the help of the medication that I'm on, that I can change the way that I think, a therapist can help you change the way that you think. Support groups can help you change the way that you think. There's coping skills that you can learn in therapy with the help of a therapist, a psychologist, support groups, etc. But if you feel that you're not in complete control of your mind, it's going to be very difficult to learn ways to deal with those thoughts. So only you can answer that question. But if you feel that you have enough control over your mind, therapy, therapy, therapy. All
I
right,
couldn't say it
last
better
one.
myself. Therapy, therapy, therapy. I think that's my first answer to most therapy. Have you tried it? And then if not, blueberries. The second choice. All right, Cindy, let's end it off strong. So we're going back and we're more therapy questions. This is like a good therapy question to end on. Cindy wants to be in therapy. Cindy is ready to be with the right kind of therapist. I want to dig deep into my childhood, lifestyle of my past. What type of trained professional therapist or psychologist, psychiatrist do you recommend seeing for this?
So there are a few different types of therapy, and I don't have one that I like more than the other. I want to be very clear. It's such a personal thing that what
Mhm.
works for you, uh, might not work for other people, and of course vice versa. That said, the most popular therapy, the one that the majority of people practice and the majority of people are in, is cognitive behavioral
Yep.
health therapy, or cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And I like CBT. I think CBT is fantastic, and every time I've stepped out of the CBT, into something else, it's helped like niche, right? It's helped with something that I'm dealing with, but then it's no good, and I go back to CBT. So again, I am not a doctor. I am not speaking on behalf of the medical establishment, but I feel like CBT has like it casts the widest net. And here's the good news. Once you cast that wide net and you start working with people, your therapist should know when they've reached their limit. And if you feel that your therapist has reached their limit, you can say, look, I don't feel that I'm getting better with you. Do you have something that you recommend? Because I remember CBT is what I love. I took CBT for a couple of years, and I got to something that was just, it was really, really impacting me. And I said to my therapist, or my therapist said to me, I don't think you're getting any better with me. And I said, I don't think I am either. And she recommended dialectical behavioral therapy for what I was having a problem with. I took DBT for 12 weeks. I took a program, worked on that. I just didn't need therapy for a few months after that. I went back to her and started working on other things. So I went from CBT, she recommended, because of the specific problem that I was having, a specific type of therapy, and then I moved back to CBT. So I think that CBT is a great place to start. I recommend a psychologist, a PhD, and I recommend interviewing your therapist. I recommend calling up and saying, hello, my name is Cindy, and I want to dig deep into my childhood and lifestyle of the past. I have a few questions for you because I want to see if we're a good fit. If you are a religious person, ask if they're religious. If you are not a religious person, ask if they're not a religious person. Ask them how they handle certain things like this. Decide who you're most comfortable talking to. Some people are like, look, this is a lot of trauma in my past. I would really feel more comfortable with a middle-aged woman. There's nothing wrong with that. Other people are like, this is I would share more with a male. There's nothing wrong with any of this. Decide who you are most comfortable with, interview them, find out what you need, and then go for that appointment. And if it doesn't work out, find another therapist. Some other things to ask are, do they give homework? Are they a touchy-feely kind of therapist, where, everything is okay? Or are they kind of a drill sergeant? You can do it. Come on. I kind of need the person that's like, no, Gabe, and calls me out on my shit. Other people need it's going to be okay. And once again, there's nothing wrong with any of this. You've got to find the good match for you. And you can usually find that out in a quick 15-minute interview before you hire them, or at the very least in the very, very first session. Just find out what you're looking for and make sure you tell them exactly what you told us. But I would recommend a PhD psychologist, and I would recommend cognitive behavioral therapy to get you started. And listen, don't be afraid to switch. Digging deep into your childhood, one therapist could be perfect for your preteen years, and then you switch to another therapist to get through high school, and then another. There's nothing wrong with that. So many people believe that they have to find one therapist and keep them forever. No. You might have a therapist that is great with helping you process what happened when you were 5, but not so great at helping you process what you were 10. Don't be afraid to switch as you get moving.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Cognitive behavioral therapy is what I do. I think it's great. But yeah, I think for, like you said, Gabe, for specific issues, you might want to look into what the other kinds of therapies are and maybe go back and forth and yeah, it's exploring it. Like the great place to start is kind of within the first. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, everyone, for sharing today. We really appreciate it. If you would like to get Gabe's book, oh yes, Mental Illness is an Asshole.
How thick
You
that
can
is.
look at that book. Oh my word. Go to his website at gabehoward.com and you can get that book. It is a wonderful book, and apparently that sometimes other merch or he might sign it. You never know.
Yeah, I throw in stuff.
He throws in swag. We all like swag. We like other stuff. I like stuff. So let's go to Gabe Howard and get his Wonderful book. And then also, if you would like to catch the Inside Mental Health, is it Inside Mental Health podcast? Yes, it's Inside Mental Health
Yep.
podcast, hosted, of course, by the fabulous Gabe Howard on Psych Central. Go to wherever you listen to podcasts on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere else. I listen, or if you listen on Stitcher, I don't know. I listen on Spotify, so that's where
It's
to go.
everywhere.
It's everywhere. How great is that? Ah,
Look, I made it fill the whole screen.
there we go. Follow along, and thank you so much for all coming. Keep track of the mighty events and the next mighty lives that will be coming. We have a bunch of different virtual events. You can go to events.themighty.com and see what else we have in store for live and virtual events. Thank you so much, everyone, and stay mighty. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.